Hey there, guys. So today we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing with positive and negative numbers. So, obviously, most numbers we consider from an early age are all positive, but now we have this wonderful little negative sign. And I've found that one of the best ways of thinking about negative signs in general is just to say that phew, negative, that actually means whoop, opposite. Okay. So when you have a negative sign out front, think the opposite of. All right. Now, that said, let's take a problem, for example. Let's say that looks like a square root. Let's say negative 24 divided by 8, or 8 divided into negative 24. So this could look like this, and it means exactly the same thing. It could look like this, and it means exactly the same thing, but it's a very simple little problem, so we'll figure it out. Now, if you don't know your multiplication facts, your math facts, then you might not realize that 8 times 3 is 24, right? 8 plus 8 is 16, plus 8 is 24. So I know that a 3 goes here, and so this is positive. This is currently positive, but actually that negative sign is unresolved, and so it's got to end up over here. So another way of thinking about negatives is debt. So positive means that you have money, negative means that you owe money. So in this case, we're just deciding how are we going to divide this debt up? Maybe this is $24 that we owe, and we're going to divide it up over 8 days, which means that we're paying back a simple payback of $3 a day for 8 days, and then our debt is forgiven. Isn't that nice? Don't ask me why, but thinking about these numbers in terms of dollars and cents really is one of the best ways of figuring these things out and getting it to stick in the compartments of your brain. So, that's a simple example, but one of the big concepts that people miss is that you have to account for negatives. So let's just say, for example, that we have negative 3 times, I'll just put a little dot there as my multiplication sign, times negative 5 times, let's go with 2, and let's say divided by, I don't know, what do we want to make this? Divided by 2 again. Let's keep it simple for ourselves, right? Okay, so, boom, get this guy out of here. Don't you love MS Paint? So anyway, when we come through here, we don't want red. Let's choose a nice little number. This is positive. We could even draw it in there if we wanted to. Positive, positive. Now, here's a nice little mental trick. Whether you're multiplying or dividing, it doesn't really matter. Division is really just very, very similar to multiplying. Again, if you know your math facts, you know that division is just the opposite of multiplying. And so if we have two negatives represented here, I like to think of it this way. If I take one and I set it this way, and I take one, I set it this way, it becomes a positive. In other words, you can change these negatives to positive if there's an even number. Okay, so it's negative times a negative is a positive. Negative divided by a negative would also be a positive. And there are principles of mathematics for why that is, but let's just keep it simple, right? So, let's try another example here. How about, sometimes they like to draw these out with parentheses. I find it to be a bit of an overcomplication because students see parentheses and then their brain goes in these different rules and they just don't really know what to go on. So, one of the biggest strategies or the best strategies that you can have is to rewrite things. So, the rewriting strategy, negative 19 times negative 32. And again, parentheses next to each other means the same things as multiplication. A dot means the same thing as multiplication for our purposes. An X means the same thing as multiplication, okay, for our purposes. It does not matter. There is something called cross and dot, and there's a difference there, but you don't need to worry about that right now, I'm sure. In this case, again, you see that these resolve to, if it's 1 and 2, they both become positive. So an even number of negatives, when you're multiplying or dividing, ends up with a positive result, right? Positive product or quotient. And an odd number is going to end up with an odd result, okay? So if you want to finish this out, you can surely do 19 times 32, set it up like a house, if you will, with a basement and an attic. That's the old way. I love it. Boom, boom, boom. 2 times 9 is 18. Carry the 1. 2 times 1 is 2. Add 1. Zip. Whoops. I tested you. Did it wrong. And then we cross out that little guy there in the first floor. Put a 0 there as a placeholder. 27. 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. And you add it up. Okay. Zoop, carry the 1. 6. 608. Now that's great, and that's going to be positive. And do you have to put the positive sign there? No, you really don't. By the way, circling the answer is excellent practice for your helps your instructor great. You could also do fancy things like, consider this to be 20 times 32, which is 640, and then you subtract the 19 and, all that other wonderful stuff. Or you subtract the 32 rather. So, yeah. So there's multiple tricks on how to do this, but I just prefer the old-fashioned way. How about we try another one? Let's see. Let's do a positive 10. We'll just write it out the way a lot of people do it. Minus 7 divided by negative 5. Again, the parentheses are kind of an overcomplication, aren't they? If we just rewrite this, then we could say 10 times negative 7 over negative 5. First thing I notice is that, we're not adding or subtracting anything here. It's just multiplication and division, which means that we can say, okay, well, that's 2 of them. They're even. They become positive. And so overall, I know that the result's going to be positive. And then simplification is another good thing. If you haven't learned about factoring, then that's definitely something that we can dive into more. But I see that these are common in terms of fives, right? So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, etc. So there's 1 5 here. 5 plus 5 is 10. There's 2 5s there. And so this simplifies to 2 times that positive 7 over 1, which is 2 times 7, which is 14. Okay, so it's positive. You circle it for your teacher. Let's make it nice for them. Teachers have it rough. Okay, that's not very nice. Whatever. So this is dealing with very simple examples of negative numbers mixed in there with positive numbers. And hopefully you've picked up a couple little tips and tricks. I will add more as we go. But don't forget, when you do addition and subtraction, then you're really thinking along those old lines of the number line. Okay, so there's different rules when you're adding and subtracting, because it really is like you have money and you have debt. So be careful with that. But this will get you started on the multiplication and division